Alright, hi everyone. I'm going to show you how to set up your wet media paper. So, first thing that you'll need is a Sharpie, and you're going to write your name first, so first and last name, your period, and the first thing that you'll do, turn your page horizontal and draw a big line down the middle. You will then split the right side into two. So draw a horizontal line from your vertical line on the right. Label this section Watercolor. Label this section Acrylic. And label this section Oil Pastel. Over here on the watercolor section, you will split it down the middle in half vertically. And then horizontally, you'll make two lines. Try to make them kind of equal. It's okay if it's not. The acrylic and oil pastel section you will split into fours like we have been doing with the dry media. And then go ahead and label your first section over here salt. This one will be called alcohol. This one will be called wet on wet. This one is wet on dry. This one is dry on dry. And this one is paper towel. So you have your watercolor section labeled. Let's label our acrylic section. This one is called dry brush. This one is called wet on wet. This one is called splatter. This one is paper towel. In the oil pastel section, the first one is called blending. The second one is called scratching, like a cat. The third one is called adding white. And the fourth one is called layering. Once you've got that, you can start with the watercolor. So we're going to start with getting our materials. We've got our acrylic paints. We've got a little palette to put our acrylic paints in. We have our brushes. These are acrylic brushes. They're acrylic brushes because they've got like a flat edge on top of them. They're not pointed. We've got our oil pastels. We've got our water. And we've got our watercolor paint. This is my palette. And we've got our watercolor brush. You'll really only need to use one brush. And it's like this medium-sized brush. And you'll also need paper towels as well. Okay, we're going to start with the salt section up here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to wet my paper in the area that I'm going to paint. So I'm just going to take my clear water, load up my brush, and paint that area. Then I'm going to take two analogous colors. So I'm going to do blue. I'm going to start with my lighter color first, which is blue. I'm going to do blue and purple. I'm going to paint half of my square with the blue. Rinse off my brush real quick. Grab my purple. Put it on the other side. And they'll kind of blend together. If you want to like blend it a little bit like that, that's cool too. You'll quickly grab some salt. The key is to do this while it's wet. So I'm going to quickly grab a tiny bit of salt, not a ton of it, just a little tiny bit. I'm going to start sprinkling it on top, like so. Grab a little more. And right away you can kind of see how it affects the paint. Now we'll let that dry. The next one, we won't have to wet the paper first. We'll just use, again, two analogous colors. I'm going to use red and orange. I'm going to start with my orange first because that's the lighter of the two. And again, you're going to draw one or paint one square. Rinse your brush. Grab your second color. And you can let them bleed a little bit into each other. And then you can either, I have a little spray bottle full of alcohol, or we found that using hand sanitizer, if you have access to it, also works. And the way that I do that is I just take a teeny tiny bit on my finger here. I kind of spread it around on my finger. And while it's wet, that's the key, while it's wet, I just kind of dab it around. With the spray bottle, it'll do that. And I kind of got it on my salt one too, but that's okay. But as you see, it creates a really interesting pattern. Okay. For your wet on wet section, you're going to wet an area like we did with the salt with just clear water. If your water is really dirty, mine's not yet, but if your water is really dirty, you can change it. You're gonna wet a section, and we're gonna do complementary colors this time. So I'm gonna take yellow and purple. I'm gonna start with my yellow because that's the lightest color. I'm gonna paint it on one side. And leave room for your purple on the other. Grab your purple, paint it on the other. Now, if you feel like you have too much paint, you can take your brush, squeeze all the water out, and you can remove paint that way. You can also help it blend while you're at it. All right. For our dry on wet section, you're going to rinse your brush, we're gonna grab two more complementary colors. I'm gonna use red and green. So I'm gonna grab some of my red first because that's the lighter color. I'm gonna load it on here, draw one, or paint one big square. And we're gonna let that dry. So that's all you have to do for this section, is let it dry first. While you're doing that, while it's drying, you can take your paintbrush, rinse the color off, take your brush, get out all the water, you can use your fingers or a paper towel, and then you're going to fray out the bristles of the brush until it looks kind of like that. We're gonna take two more complementary colors. I'm gonna do blue and orange. I'm gonna take my lightest color first, which is orange. You only need a little bit, just like that. And I'm going to do vertical lines first. So just drag it across like that. Rinse your brush, squeeze it out, or use a paper towel. Fray out your bristles, like so. Grab your second color, your darker color, which is blue in my case. And this time you're going to drag it across horizontally. There you go. So you'll kind of have like this plaid looking pattern. All right, for the next one, you're gonna need a paper towel. Okay, so grab your paper towels, rip off a paper towel, scrunch it up, put it to the side for now. And this time you're going to use that wet on wet technique. So wet your square first with clear water. Then go in and grab two analogous colors. I'm going to do red and purple. So red is the lighter color, so I put it on one side. And then I rinse my brush. I go in with the purple on the other side. You can kind of make them blend together if you want. Rinse your brush, put it aside, grab your paper towel, kind of make it into a little point like this. Make sure it's dry, don't wet your paper towel, just have a dry one. And then you can go in, start making little dabs, and it'll take away the paint. The key is to make it wet, like have it wet before you use the paper towel. Okay. For our acrylic section, you're going to put away your watercolor brush. You might want to keep your paper towel for now, but you can put away your brush and your watercolors. And then get your palette, get your paints. And today we're going to be using yellow. I'm actually going to use this yellow, red, blue, purple or violet, and green. Okay, so set up your palette, take your colors. You only need a teeny tiny bit. We're not covering large areas, so we only need a little tiny bit, about that much. So I'm going to put my red, my yellow, my green, my blue, and my purple. All right, you can put your paints away. Put them back where they belong. This back. All right. The first technique that we are going to do, you're just going to grab your, this is like a medium flat brush. I have 3 sizes. I have a small, a medium, and a large, but I'm just going to use our medium today. The first technique that we're going to do is called dry brush. So label it dry brush. And you can keep your water that you had with your watercolor over here. All right. So we're going to take 2 analogous colors. I'm going to do blue and purple. I'm going to take my lightest color first. I'm not going to wet my brush. I'm just going to use straight up the color. And I'm only going to use a tiny, tiny, tiny bit. Just a tiny bit. And I'm going to start making these marks. And you can add more as you go. We're going to create a gradient or a value scale. So you're going to want, this side pretty dark and then get lighter as you go. You can rinse your brush, wipe it off with a paper towel, make sure it's dry. Go in with your second color, your darker color, your purple. And then we're just going to put that color on top. Remember, I'm only using a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of paint. If I use too much, the dry effect, you'll lose it. You'll lose the dry effect. All right. Got that. Now the next technique is called wet on wet. So label it wet on wet. And just like we did with watercolor, I'm gonna wet the spot where we're gonna paint first. And then use another two analogous colors. I'm going to use the green and the blue. I'm going to wet my brush a little bit, not a lot, don't dunk it in there. Just wet it a little bit. Get that green, just a tiny bit, and paint it on there. Paint a half of it. Rinse your brush. Grab a little bit of blue. And put it on there with the green. And you'll see that they kind of blend together. All right. The next one, you're going to dry your brush. Grab some paint, any color you want. I'm gonna use purple. This time you can grab a fair amount. Okay. Now you're going to take your brush and use your finger, your pointer finger, pull it towards you and flick. Just keep flicking. And if you don't see any more paint coming off, you can grab more paint. And it'll continue to make these splatters. Grab some more paint. Just keep flicking until you're happy with it. You might want to wash your hands or dry it off on the paper towel. Rinse your brush. Oh, I forgot to label it. Label this one splatter. All right. The next one, similar to our paper towel and our watercolor, label it paper towel. But this time, we're going to take our dry paper towel, going to dip it in, we're going to use complementary colors this time. So I'm going to dip it in a yellow. So the complementary color of yellow is purple. I'm going to dip a little tiny tip of my paper towel into it, so it's like that. And then I'm going to go around and I'm going to make another value scale, so more paint on the left, less on the right. I'm going to go in again with my paper towel, go to purple this time, that's our darker color. And then again, more paint on the left, less on the right. And you'll notice that that's like a weird brown purple color. All right. You can throw away your paper towel now and rinse out your palette. I'm going to do that later. Put away all of your paints. Like so. Put my paint back. You can also dump out your water. I will do that later. Okay. Put away your brushes. Throw away your towel. And then get out your oil pastels. So here's my oil pastels. You're going to want a wide variety of colors here. Okay. All right, the first section we are going to label it Alright, the first section we're going to label it blending. Alright. You're going to take 3 analogous colors. I'm going to do blue, green, and yellow. So organize them from darkest to light. So my darkest color is blue, my medium color is green, and my lightest color is yellow. I'm going to take my darkest color first and make a little rectangle right here. Color in completely and make sure that you have room for 2 more rectangles. All right, put that medium color next to your next darkest color, like so, just next to it. We're not blending yet. And lastly, put your lightest color next to your medium color. Now, to blend it, you're going to take your lightest color first, and where the lightest color meets the medium color, like right in the middle here, going to make tiny little circles. Teeny tiny circles. And that will blend the 2 together. To blend your medium color and your darkest color, you're going to take your medium color and again blend it where they meet each other. Teeny tiny circles. And there you go. You can put those back. The next box will be scratching. This one only requires 1 color. But the 1 color has to be really dark, so I would recommend like a dark green, dark purple, dark blue. I'm going to use this dark green. And you're just going to make a nice box. That's not acceptable, you have to completely color it in. Completely color. until you can't see any white whatsoever. And then I'm going to just use my fingernail, but you can use your ID, you can use a pencil with the lead pushed in, so you can push in the lead, and then you'll just scratch little designs into it, like so. Make sure the designs are appropriate, but they can be anything that you want. Heart, triangle, star, I don't know, anything. Okay. The next box is going to be called Adding White, so call it Adding White. You're going to take another really dark color, not the same as your scratching, and you're going to draw another box. Again, that's not acceptable, you have to color it completely in. Until you can't see any white spaces. Okay? You're going to take a white pastel, like this one, and you can draw a line down the middle, color half of your box white, or put white over it. It won't be completely white, but it'll be a lighter color than your original color, and that's called a tint. Right. Your last box will be called layering, so go ahead and label it layering. And then you will take two complementary colors. I'm going to do blue and orange. And again, start with your first box on the side here, color it in completely. Make sure that you have room for your second box, like so. And then overlap it with your second color. Again, make sure you start with your lightest color. And there you go. Put your colors back. And make sure you have your name on it. First and last name. Make sure you have your period on it. And you're done.